The House will come to order. The pledge will be led by Matthew Bowden, Lydia Bowden, Jonas Van Zwieden, Amy Rhodes, Nora Kerrigan, and Jacqueline Kerrigan from the West Metro Christian Educators.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Kohler, please call the roll.
Representatives Arndt. Becker J. Nice shot. Becker K. Representative Casey Becker.
Casey Becker excused.
Brown. Buck. Buckner. Carver. Conti. Coram. Court. Danielson. Del Grosso excused. Dorr. Duran. Esgar. Everett. Fields. Foote. Garnett. Janal. Hamner. Humphrey. Joshi. Representative Joshi. Kagan. Representative Kagan. Kaiser. Klingenschmidt. Kraft-Tharp. Landgraf. Lawrence. Lebsock. Representative Casey Becker is present. Lee. Lontine. Lundeen. McCann. Melton. Mitch Bush. Representative Mitch Bush. Moreno. Navarro. Neville. Nordberg. Pabon. Pedersen. Primavera. Priola. Rankin. Ransom. Rosenthal. Rupe. Ryden. Sane. Salazar. Sias. Singer. Tate. Thurlow. Tyler. Van Winkle. Vigil. Willett. Williams. Wilson. Windholes. Winter. Young. Madam Speaker.
Make a motion. Right, so she could do that right before third reading, couldn't she? So. Oh, I announce the conferees and then she'll offer the motion. So would you tell her? Okay. With 64 present, 1 excused, a quorum is present. Representative Thurlow.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker and members, I move that the reading of the Journal of Friday, April 10th, 2015 be dispensed with and that it be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You have heard the motion that the journal be adopted as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. That's not a very good aye. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Motion passes. Members, could I have your attention for just a minute? We're going to proceed to announcements and introductions, but as we do, I would like to welcome back our wonderful Chief Clerk, Marilyn Edens. Please stand up. Yes. And Marilyn just asked me to extend her many, many thanks and love to all of you, which I know is shared. Thank you. Now we have announcements and introductions. Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I apologize if there's been confusion about the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee schedule this afternoon. I believe that I made an announcement on Friday. I believe the announcement I'm going to make now is the same. I can't be 100% sure. We have many sort of similar bills up, so I apologize for any confusion, but let me read the list as I have it now, which is not the list that is in your calendar, and people in the lobby who may be listening and people at home. The first bill up today will be Senate Bill 86 with Representative Joshi. The second bill will be House Bill 1168 with Representative Neville. The third bill will be Senate Bill 175 with Representative Humphrey. The fourth bill will be House Bill 1138 with Representative Ransom. The fifth bill will be Senate Bill 32 with Representative Ransom. And the sixth bill will be House Bill 1152 with Representative Nordberg. So apologize for any inconvenience, but hopefully this will clear things up, and this will be our schedule today. Thank you. And we are in room 271. Room 271. Thank you.
Representative Pabon, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it is nice to have a little quiet in the chamber. I can't quite understand why that is on Monday morning, but members, this has been the day you've been waiting for all year, I think. Today is House District 4 Day at the Capitol, and we have several guests here on the side of the chamber who are eagerly awaiting to hear from you about the work that the state representative from House District 4 has been doing on their behalf. So please don't be shy in sharing your experiences and your thoughts about everyone's running over there now. So just want to welcome all the guests from House District 4 who are here today to watch the debate and discourse that we're going to have this morning. And amongst them is my own father, Richard Pabon. So please, let's welcome them with a round of applause.
Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would need to welcome the West Metro Christian Home Educators. A large group of kids were up in the gallery, and then some of them led our pledge this morning. So just want to welcome them to the Capitol and have a great tour.
Representative Court.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, we have an extremely rare guest today.
Representative Court, I will need to get some order. Hold on just a second. May we have your attention to the well for announcement from Representative Court.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I said, we have an extremely rare guest today. The author of our Declaration of Independence, the author of the Virginia Commonwealth's Constitution, the founder of the University of Virginia, and our third president, I was right the first time. Our third president, Thomas Jefferson, is here with us today on his 272nd anniversary of his birth. Light shining through a prism produces an array of colors. Similarly, Jefferson enlightened our lives by involving himself in colorful activities, some of which we in Colorado are exceedingly grateful for. As third president and the first to be inaugurated in Washington, D.C., Jefferson negotiated the Louisiana Purchase. All of you know where that is geographically. And it was a vast expanse that includes Colorado, which doubled the size of the U.S. Prospectors in 1859 referred to Denver City and Auraria as part of the Jefferson Territory. In 1803, he sent Lewis and Clark, heading the Corps of Discovery, to explore the great American desert, which changed our national landscape and opened doors of opportunity for pioneers who ventured into the West. Abraham Lincoln referred to Jefferson, quote, as the most distinguished politician in our history. Today, he comes to life on this anniversary of his birthday and stands with us on the floor of the House. We salute Thomas Jefferson for thinking big, creating an American dream that embraced the West. All the more remarkable because in his 83 years, Jefferson never traveled more than 50 miles from his beloved Monticello. Please welcome President Thomas Jefferson.
Happy birthday, President Jefferson. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And colleagues, I would like to invite you tomorrow morning, 7:15, downstairs to our Bible study. We are studying 2 Timothy, and we'd also like to invite President Jefferson to come on down, but all of you are invited tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, you should have on your desk an announcement. Hot dogs are back Thursday. That's not the big news, though. Thursday is Sportsman's Day at the Capitol. On the first floor, there will be displays and booths set up. It'll be an all-day celebration. We'll have the hot dogs at lunch, and there's a reception over at the Scottish Rite at 5:30 that evening. You'll be hearing more about this week. Also, if you haven't noticed, we have a group of Girl Scouts over here on my left. We're excited about those Girl Scouts being here. I happen to have one from Salida. I would like for her to stand up. She's a Girl Scout Gold Award recipient. Her mother is here also. I'd love to say that this is Kelsey Quick, but I can't do that, so welcome to the Capitol.
Are there Representative, or Madam Majority, Representative Buck, and then...
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would just like all of my friends and colleagues to give a warm welcome to Matt and Isabel Allner from Monument, Colorado, right here.
Was that an elected official that you just...
I don't think so.
That's just $2, Representative Buck. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, we have some very special guests with us today in the well. I would like to ask the Colorado Girl Scouts to please stand up. Members, as many of you know, the Colorado Girl Scouts build courage, confidence, and character for many young women across the state. And today we have representation from across Colorado, and many of them are engaged in several community service activities when it comes to healthcare, education, encouraging exercise, and those types of responsibilities. So members, I just want to take a moment, if you could please help us in recognizing our guests, the Colorado Girl Scouts. And I do want to just say the Girl Scout promise. Some of you may not know that many years ago when I lived in Northglenn, I was a Girl Scout too. And so the Girl Scout promise is, on my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, to help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law. The Girl Scout law, I will do my best to be honest and fair, friendly and helpful, considerate and caring, courageous and strong, and responsible for what I say and do, and to respect myself and others, respect authority, use resources wisely, make the world a better place, and be a sister to every Girl Scout. So members, please help us in recognizing the Colorado Girl Scouts.
Since they're all students, Madam Majority Leader, I think that gets you off the hook. Welcome, Girl Scouts. Are there further announcements and introductions? The Speaker has an announcement that the Senate did not concur in House amendments and has requested a conference committee for Senate Bill 234. And the conferees for that are Representative Hamner, Representative Young, and Representative Rankin. And Mr. Kohler, please read the title to Senate Bill 234.
Thanks. Senate Bill 234 by Senator Lambert, also Representative Hamner, concerning the provision for payment of the expenses of the executive, legislative, and judicial departments of the state of Colorado and its agencies and institutions for and during the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2015, except as otherwise noted.
Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the first conference committee on Senate Bill 234 be granted permission to go beyond the scope of the differences between the two houses.
The motion is to go beyond the scope of the conference committee report on Senate Bill 234. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Conti. Close the machine with 48 ayes, 16 noes, and 1 excused. The conference committee is granted permission to go beyond the scope on Senate Bill 234. The next order of business is third reading, final passage of bills. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1307.
House Bill 1307 by Representative Escar, also Senator Stebbins, concerning modification and definition of the term qualified commercial structure as the term is used in the Colorado Job Creation Main Street Revitalization Act.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1307 on third reading and final passage.
The question is the passage of House Bill 1307 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no discussion, Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Close the machine with 42 ayes, 22 noes, and 1 excused. House Bill 1307 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 197.
Senate Bill 197 by Senators Crider and John, also Representatives Fields and Willett, concerning the prescriptive authority of advanced practice nurses.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 197 on third reading and final passage.
The question is the passage of Senate Bill 197 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no discussion, Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Kraft-Tharp. Close the machine with 64 ayes, no noes, and 1 excuse. Senate Bill 197 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1286.
House Bill 1286 by Representatives Kagan and Salazar, also Senator Ulibarri, concerning the court's authority to require prosecution in cases of police misconduct when the decision not to prosecute was an abuse of discretion.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1286 on third reading and final passage.
The question is the passage of House Bill 1286 on third reading and final passage. Representative Kagan.
Madam Speaker, members of the House, I'm only coming to the well on third reading because I think there is, this is an important decision, and I'm appealing to those that are inclined to vote no on this bill to maybe reconsider. The bill is quite straightforward. It says that in a case of a police shooting or a police allegation of police misconduct resulting in serious bodily injury or death, the prosecutor's decision to file or not file should be reviewed according to a new standard. Now, there have been very meritorious comments from various members of this House that it is a lower standard that we seek to move to. Some have said that the existing standard is an impossible standard. Some have feared that there will be an increase in the number of directed prosecutions if we should change the standard. And I'm asking you, members, to look at the two standards. The existing standard for such cases is whether the DA's decision was arbitrary or capricious and without reasonable excuse. That's the current standard. Arbitrary or capricious and without reasonable excuse. And I submit to you, members, that that is not a higher or a lower standard than an abuse of discretion standard. But it has a slightly different focus. And the difference in the focus between the two standards, I submit to you, members, the difference in the focus of the two standards is when you're looking for arbitrary or capricious and without reasonable excuse, that's very appropriate for you really didn't care about this case. You just arbitrarily, capriciously, and without reasonable excuse just decided not to prosecute it. Well, that was my grandmother that was mugged outside that bar. And you arbitrarily or capriciously and without reasonable excuse, Mr. Prosecutor, and I say this to the judge, this prosecutor didn't do it because of arbitrary, capricious lack of consideration, didn't take it seriously, and that is a good standard for the common or garden case. That is rarely the issue in a police shooting case. In a police shooting case, there is no chance that the prosecutor will not have given the case enough thought. There is no chance that the prosecutor will just arbitrarily and capriciously and without reasonable excuse just say, don't think I'll prosecute this one. That's not what happens in politicized cases. In politicized cases, what happens is that sometimes the improper influences, the begging for a prosecution, or the begging for a non-prosecution, the pressure, the public pressure, sometimes those strong public pressures are taken into consideration. And taking those improper influences into consideration, whether it be the pressure to prosecute or the pressure not to prosecute, that is not a matter of arbitrariness, capriciousness without reasonable excuse. That is a matter of improper influence and abuse of discretion. Now, this is not a higher standard or a lower standard. It is a different standard with a different focus. And the focus in this case is abuse of discretion, which focuses on improper influences, which are more often brought to bear in a police shooting case than they are in your basic standard street mugging case. Street mugging cases, the question is, could the prosecutor be bothered? Did the prosecutor take it seriously enough? Give it enough thought? Was the prosecutor arbitrary, capricious, and without reasonable excuse? But when it comes to a politicized case, the question is, was there an abuse of discretion by considering improper influences? Now, they're not very different. Improper influences play into the arbitrary, capricious, and without reasonable excuse standard. And lack of consideration plays into the abuse of discretion standard, but they have a slightly different focus. One focus is more appropriate for police shootings. The other publicly prosecuted cases, publicly politicized cases, the other standard is more appropriate for your common or garden street mugging. And it is because of that slight difference in focus, rather than whether it's a higher burden or a lower burden. It is because of that slight different focus that one would like the prosecutor to focus on and the judge in reviewing the decision to focus on. It's because of that slightly different focus that takes place in a politicized case rather than a non-politicized case that I urge you to consider this standard. Neither higher nor lower, but simply more appropriate.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Respectfully, the arbitrary and capricious standard, which is well developed in case law, has nothing to do with whether a prosecutor or a DA's office was careless or indifferent. Has nothing to do with that. The arbitrary and capricious standard developed by case law is whether or not, when you look at the elements of the criminal offenses, whether there is evidence to support going forward in a prima facie case to go forward with prosecution. That's what arbitrary and capricious is. As part of that analysis, you also look to see what defenses are available, and you take that into account. Because it is wrong for the government to put an individual at risk in a prosecution if there is no reasonable, if you cannot show evidence against the elements. But when there is evidence, then you go forward with prosecution, because it is for the judge and the jury then to decide if there is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And as somebody who has prosecuted many cases, that is the ethical obligation of the DA. Representative Kagan is absolutely right in saying that moving from an arbitrary and capricious to an abuse of discretion, one is not higher or lower than the other. It is a different focus. My concern is that in moving to a new standard, abuse of discretion, that it is more subject to politicization than arbitrary and capricious, which, based on my experience, is more focused on the evidence. And if there's evidence of the elements of the crime, then you go forward. Thank you. I would vote ask for a no vote.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1286? Seeing none, Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Close the machine. Oops, there we go. Close the machine. With 40 ayes, 24 noes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1286 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1291.
House Bill 1291 by Representative Melton, also Senator Guzman, concerning prohibiting the use of a chokehold by a peace officer.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1291 on third reading and final passage.
The question is the passage of House Bill 1291 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no discussion, I beg your pardon, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I don't know if I did not get the answer to this question when we discussed this in second readings, but I would like to ask, in the case, for instance, if there were a female officer or some other officer that was trying to detain someone, and they were maybe smaller and weaker than who they were trying to detain, and they needed to use a chokehold to detain this person. Would they, under this law, be illegal in doing that? I guess that would be my question.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Brown, I'm sorry, I don't remember you asking that question on second reading. In fact, I don't remember any opposition on second reading. To answer your question, yes, that would not be allowed under this law, or under this bill, should it pass. Again, the purpose of this bill is to remove the chokehold from a normal standard to a lethal force standard. And we amended that language in judiciary so that way it was more in line with the protection of the officer's life or the life of someone else. That would not include detainment. And so with that, I hope that answers your question, and I hope that you'll still be an aye vote.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just, I wasn't in committee. What was the testimony of law enforcement on this?
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Law enforcement, so the chiefs of police were actually supportive. The sheriffs were neutral, and there was no opposition to the bill.
Further discussion on House Bill 1291. Seeing none, Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Close the machine. With 44 ayes, 20 noes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1291 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1013.
House Bill 1013 by Representative Quorum, also Senators Sonnenberg and Hodge, concerning the implementation of recommendation number 1 set forth in the study of the South Platte River Alluvial Aquifer prepared by the Colorado Water Institute pursuant to House Bill 1278 and in connection with making an appropriation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1013 on third reading and final passage.
The question is the passage of House Bill 1013 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no discussion, Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Conti. Close the machine with 64 ayes, no noes, and 1 excused. House Bill 1013 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1229.
House Bill 1229 by Representative McCann, also Senator Martinez Humenick, concerning retaliation against a prosecutor and in connection with making an appropriation.
Representative McCann.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I would request permission to offer a third reading amendment.
Representative McCann, we have to have the motion on the floor first.
I move House Bill 1229 and then request permission to submit a third reading amendment.
The motion is for House Bill 1229, and the motion in addition is for permission to grant a third reading amendment. Please proceed, Representative McCann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a technical amendment to make sure that we included an elected district attorney in the retaliation section, and also to add the court as someone to whom a person may have to report a threatening communication. So I would ask for permission to submit this amendment.
The question is permission to submit a third reading amendment on House Bill 1229. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Close the machine with 63 ayes, 1 no, and 1 excused. Permission is granted for a third reading amendment on House Bill 1229. Representative McCann.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would ask, I would move Amendment 004 and ask for a favorable vote.
Amendment 004 is properly displayed. The motion is to pass Amendment 004. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Close the machine. With 55 ayes, 9 noes, and 1 excused, Amendment 004 is passed. We are now back to the question of passage of House Bill 1229 on third reading and final passage. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I move for the passage of House Bill 1229 as amended on third reading and final passage.
That motion has been made and accepted. We are now on the question of passage of House Bill 1229 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Close the machine. With 52 ayes, 11 noes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1229 is passed. Co-sponsors. Who didn't vote? I beg your pardon, I didn't see it. Did somebody not vote? We'll take your voice vote now. Did they?
Madam Majority?
We only have Kagan. Representative Kagan, would you please vote? Right, we will take that off the board for a minute. So we are now, the vote is With 53 yes, 11 no, and 1 excused, House Bill 1229 is repassed. Now we have co-sponsors.
Well, he already did say that. So you just announced to remove his name as co-sponsor because he did say it.
Yes, and Representative Kagan requested to have his name removed as a co-sponsor. And we will proceed with other co-sponsors once we get that done. Do we have all the co-sponsors for House Bill 1229 less Representative Kagan? Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 183.
Senate Bill 183 by Senators Hodge and Sonnenberg, also Representatives Arndt and Becker J, concerning the quantification of the historical consumptive use of a water right.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over Senate Bill 183 until tomorrow, April 14th.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 183 until tomorrow, April 14th. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, so ordered. The next order of business is general orders, second reading of bills. Representative Young.
Madam Speaker, I move the House now resolve itself to committee of the whole consideration of general order.
You have heard the motion. If there are no objections, Representative Young will take the chair.
Committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length. Committee amendments will not be read unless they are requested, as they are printed in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and not read unless requested. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the Majority Leader. The court rule is relaxed.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 137.
Senate Bill 137 by Senator Balmer, also Representatives Del Grosso and Janal, concerning business entities permitted to provide the program of all-inclusive care for the elderly.
Representative Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 137 and the committee report from Business Affairs and Labor.
To the committee report, please, Representative Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L003. The purpose of the amendment.
Representative Janal, please wait.
It's part of the committee report.
Okay, then just so there's no. Then you're not moving. Just talk about it.
The business committee did whatever it said. Whatever that amendment said.
But it was passed.
Right. So first you need to withdraw that.
Mr. Chair, I wish to withdraw.
Representative Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish to withdraw Amendment L003.
Thank you. To the committee report, please.
The purpose of the committee report and the amendment there was to a framework around the process of conversion should any PACE entity choose to go that route. It laid down ground rules, and the amendment ensures transparency, public engagement, and dialogue among public interest organizations, members of the community, the PACE provider, and the Attorney General's office. The amendment does not change or in any way limit the Attorney General's broad authority to oversee any of the conversion process, which currently exists in both statute and common law. The amendment was supported by AARP, the Colorado Center for Law and Policy, the Colorado Senior Lobby, Colorado Consumer Health Initiative, and the Colorado Cross Disabilities Coalition, as well as the Senior Lobby, Consumer Health Initiative, and Colorado's Cross Disabilities. I ask for the support for this amendment. It passed unanimously out of the House Business Affairs Committee.
Is there further discussion on the Business Affairs and Labor Report?
I ask for an aye vote, Mr. Chair.
Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The Business Affairs and Labor Report passes. Representative Janal to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 137 is called the Business Entities and PACE. Currently, only nonprofit organizations are authorized to offer the program to all-inclusive care for the elderly, which is the PACE program. If permitted by federal law, the bill expands the range of organizations that can operate as PACE providers to include public, private, and for-profit business entities. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 137? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 137. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. Senate Bill 137 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1288.
House Bill 1288 by Representative Williams, also Senator Carroll, concerning updates to the statutory prohibition on profiling.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1288 and the Committee on Judiciary report.
Thank you, Representative Williams. To the Judiciary report, please.
Thank you. Members, on the committee report, we removed the seek to consent for search. We also already have protections on consent from House Bill 1021. And we've also inserted the message that if a court suppresses evidence or dismisses a case as a result of the violation of racial profiling, then that agency who employs that officer must issue the citation, and they will do training, profiling training in that agency.
Is there further discussion on the Judiciary report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The Judiciary Committee report passes. To the bill, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Member, House Bill 1288 actually is being updated. House Bill 1288 updates the current profiling laws, and it adds color, national origin, nationality, language, sex, gender, and identity.
Representative Williams, excuse me for a moment. Members, side conversations, please off the floor. Let's give your attention to the well, please. Please continue, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It adds socioeconomic status and disability to the list of factors that may not be used as a basis for interacting with public and including suspects. It also clarifies that selecting a person to be subject to routine, spontaneous, investigatory activities, including interviews, detentions, traffic stops, and pedestrian stops, or frisk and other types of bodily searches of a person's property, and it determines the scope of a duration of an investigation. except when there is reasonable and articulable suspicion, a peace officer may not keep a person detained beyond the amount of necessary time to issue a citation or enforce a court order. It also clarifies the physical descriptions that they may be able to use. Ron, can we have the video?
This video has been approved previously, so members, please direct your attention to the screen.
Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago. And when you think about why, in the African American community at least, there's a lot of pain around what happened here. I think it's important to recognize that the African American community is looking at this issue through a set of experiences and a history that that doesn't go away. You know, there are very few African American men in this country who haven't had the experience of being followed when they were shopping in a department store. That includes me. There are very, very few African American men who haven't had the experience of walking across the street and hearing the locks click on the doors of cars. That happens to me, at least before I was a senator. I think it's going to be important for all of us to do some soul searching. As difficult and challenging as this whole episode has been for a lot of people, I don't want us to lose sight that things are getting better. Each successive generation seems to be making progress in changing attitudes when it comes to race. Doesn't mean we're in a post-racial society. It doesn't mean that racism is eliminated. But you know, when I talk to Malia and Sasha, and I listen to their friends and I see them interact, they're better than we are. They're better than we were on these issues.
Members, thank you for your attention. Representative Williams, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members in committee, we had 5.5 hours of testimony, of stories.
The reason I actually wanted to come out today is not to...
Sorry, Representative Williams. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we had testimony after testimony, 5.5 hours of testimony of personal stories of racial profiling. There was also a lot of question around data to prove this. And while there isn't substantive data to prove this, we have a little bit from USA Today. I think I shared with everyone that we'll be starting an interim committee to collect this. And if you could have been there, if you could have heard the testimony, we had some heart-wrenching stories about this being alive and well in our state, and not just in the urban areas. It's happening all over the state. And Ron, I'd ask you to display the chart.
Thank you. This has been properly displayed and approved ahead of time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, this is a graph that USA Today put out. And you can go to this graph anywhere in the country and click on your state to look at the statistics. But this is just a small view of what we have. This is the 2011-2012 arrest rates per 1,000 residents in the top 6 counties in our state. And if you look at it, we have Arvada, we have Boulder, we have Castle Rock, we have Aurora, Parker, and Lakewood. And I think it's critical that we understand that if you see, look at the darker blue bar there, this is the black rate of stops. And even in this number, our Latinos are not included in this. So imagine if they were, and the number of stops that are occurring here in our state. And Ron, would you please display the second graph? Members, this one is a little bit more detailed.
Thank you, Representative Williams.
Same.
This has been properly approved ahead of time as well.
Yes, Mr.
Please
Chair,
continue.
it has. And if you look at this one, this is not just happening in Denver. It's not just happening in Aurora. It's happening in Mesa, Larimer County, Fort Collins, Longmont, Broomfield, Westminster, Denver, Inglewood, Jefferson County, Littleton, Colorado Springs, and El Paso County. And the statistics are the same. There's a number of arrest rates for African Americans. And I want to reiterate that Latinos are not included in these rates. You can take it down. Ron, you can take it down. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, at this time, I would like to offer an amendment and ask that it be displayed.
Which amendment, Representative?
L003, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Williams. Please hold on. Are you moving this amendment?
I'd like to move L003, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Williams. L003 has been moved and is properly displayed. Please proceed, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, we had some conversations with committee members in the Judiciary Committee, and this addresses page 3, line 12, where we're striking the word reliable. The statement says that you can seek and exist trustworthy and reliable information. We know that the term trustworthy has been defined in statute, and it can be defined in court cases, but through our research, reliable is one that's a little bit broad, and so we would like to strike the word reliable, and I ask you for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L003? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L003. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. L003 is adopted. To the bill, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Remember, this is a very important piece of legislation. I believe that it is going to help those who may have been racially profiled. I think it's going to help our officers and protect them also. And Ron, I'd like to ask you to play video 2.
To interpret the reasons for that in a historical context. They understand that some of the
fascinating story as it
violence that takes place,
and, you know, it kind of unfolded
poor black
in
neighborhoods
several
around the
acts.
country.
Before I kind of talk
is
about
born
that,
out
let me
of a very violent past in this country.
put down a few items. I know Skip Gates very well. He's been a friend for many years.
That we see in those communities.
He's interviewed me many times, and we had shared the stage many times. I have the utmost respect.
A very difficult history.
Great guy. I don't know Sergeant Crowley, but from all I can tell, he's a fine police officer. And he is very sensitive to these kinds of issues. He even taught it to other police officers. And so we have this situation that unfolded in several acts. Let me also say that this kind of problem still exists in this, quote, post-racial America. It isn't quite post-racial. We still have conflicts between African-American citizens, especially males, and the police department. And we shouldn't wave that away or anyway minimize that kind of problem. In this particular instance, a lady talked to another lady who said that she saw something happening at the door of this house. The lady correctly called the police department. She couldn't tell if it was just somebody trying to get into their own house or somebody trying to perform a burglary, and she did the right thing and called the police. There was no racial comment as this call was being made. Sergeant Crowley responded to the call, talked briefly to the woman, and then he went to the house to try to make sure that it was secure and what was going on. And a conversation took place. This is where Act 2 begins. We're not quite sure what the nature of that conversation was. But apparently it disturbed Sergeant Crowley, and apparently Dr. Gates was disturbed by being challenged in his own home when he was in his home now. And at that point, words were exchanged, and before too long, other officers arrived. Sergeant Crowley even called for the Harvard University police to come to certify who was the occupant of this house. And the next thing you know, they felt that Mr. Gates, Dr. Gates, had disturbed the peace, and he's in handcuffs. Interesting, the picture of him in handcuffs shows a black officer in front of him and a Hispanic officer also there. And then the charges are dismissed the next day. I read it in my newspaper a couple days later. It looked like just a short story. But in this 24-hour news environment we're in, it went viral. Within about 24 hours, it's
So members, this is a very important piece of legislation, and I want to ask you for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1288? Representative Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Representative Williams, for bringing this bill. It's an important bill. This is a problem, and it needs to be dealt with. And the first portion of this bill, in fact, addresses that, I think, effectively and speaks to the videos we've seen, speaks to the overarching concern and problem that exists. I do appreciate very much the narrowing to a small degree that was offered in the amendment, pulling the language reliable out in the section dealing with trustworthy and reliable. But my general comment is this. The first part of the bill, the first page of the bill, gets at what needs to be gotten at, and everything following that tends to narrow and restrict the ability of police officers to do that which they need to do in ways that may or may not be obtrusive, but certainly in ways that could be less obtrusive and interrupting to people's lives than may be available under the terms of this bill as drafted. So I argue against the bill. I'm thankful for the amendment that was offered. It does improve it slightly, but still there's significant portions in this that are not helpful to public safety.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1288? Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Echoing somewhat what Representative Lundin has said, that this bill, while we heard it for, I think it was hours in committee, and we were able to talk about some of the ways to improve it. In fact, one of the amendments that I ran did, I believe, improve it with regard to training of officers. If their department was found to be using profiling in a way that was inconsistent with the laws. One of the other issues we had, and the trustworthy and reliable was dealt with, and I appreciate the sponsor for doing that, was also with the language just above that in line 11 on page 3, which says seeking to apprehend a specific suspect. And now, while that conforms to an initial idea of what's trying to be done here, the issue becomes, how does this work in the field? How does this work in actual practice? And you can think of the scenario. A crime takes place at a local convenience store, and the witness says, when the police drive up and say, okay, what happened here? They say, well, somebody came in. They were 5'5" to 6'1". They were wearing a sweatshirt or some kind of longer sleeve shirt. But the lighting was poor and everything went so quickly. I think they were blue. Maybe they were dark green. I'm not quite sure. Well, now all of a sudden you have the ability for the police through dispatch to lay out what they're looking for. But it's not specific. Those are pretty vague descriptions. And in those vague descriptions, if you have a patrol officer down,
There's the amendment.
Thanks, down on the street and somebody's coming down the road, at what point do they make that decision? Was the information we were given specific enough to stop this suspect and ask some questions? And they may not be a suspect, but they've got some of it. They're somewhere between 5'5", they're somewhere between 6'1". They're wearing a long sleeve shirt, but it's not a sweatshirt. And they aren't quite blue, they aren't quite dark green. They're somewhat kind of an off color of, some kind of off color of hue. And so what do? Well, they're going to have to stop them. And then the issue becomes, if they stop them, let's say they find the evidence on them, there's something in their pocket, they've got them cold, they caught them with their hands around what was stolen. A good defense attorney like Representative Willett here will have a heyday with that and potentially throw a lot of cases that would be good cases out because in the judge's opinion, it wasn't specific enough for them to make that stop in the first place. And so I think it would be the right thing for us to do while keeping the intent of the bill and making sure that profiling is not done, because we all agree that shouldn't be done. Making it so that we can still enforce laws and have a police department that can be accurate and the ability to protect its community. So I would move L004.
And you would like
that
it
be properly displayed.
Thank you, Representative Dorr. Thank you, Madam Chief Clerk Edens. It's a pleasure to serve with you, by the way. L004 has been properly displayed and moved to the amendment. Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this amendment does exactly what we talked about. It strikes one word, specific. and it makes it so that we can continue to have law enforcement do their job while passing a piece of legislation that reinforces the fact that we do not want to see profiling go on in our state. And I think this makes the bill better. It makes the bill to where we're getting to the heart of it, where we want law enforcement to be able to do their jobs while not abusing their powers. And I'd ask for a yes vote on this amendment.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate being recognized by you. It's a pleasure to serve with you.
And with you. Please proceed.
Thank you. Members, that one word right there, that one word, if you strike it out, it allows for racial profiling. That's the problem with this amendment. What we want is we want law enforcement to be able to rely on physical descriptions. And that's what the bill says. That law enforcement can rely on physical descriptions, including sex, race, ethnicity, and color, to a select person to be subjected to an investigatory activity or determine the scope, substance, or duration of the investigation when they have a specific suspect. Without this language here, they could stop anybody. And this is the problem, is that the people that they're stopping happen to be African American. They happen to be Latinos. They happen to be Native Americans. That's why having specific is important in the bill. I'll give you a real life example. 1991, I'm a student at CU Boulder. I am the student chair of the police search committee for the CU Boulder Police Department. It was actually the CU Boulder Police Department. I'm standing on a street corner waiting to get a ride to Fort Collins, and I'm standing with a friend of mine. Officers roll up, get out of the car, and say, "What are you guys doing here?" "We're waiting for our friends to pick us up." "What's in your bags?" "Clothes." "Why are you standing here again?" "Because we're waiting for our friends to pick us up." Well, we just happened to get a report of two suspects who look just like you. In 1991 Boulder, one is my friend is African American and half Korean, and I'm Chicano. Really? Just happen to look just like us, huh? And these suspects are carrying guns. You don't mind if we frisk you, do you? Well, yes, we do. Where is your trustworthy report that indeed there was a half Korean, half African American, and Chicano student meeting our description carrying guns in Boulder? Where is that? There was no report. There was no such thing. It was a matter of profiling us and of throwing us on top of a cop car to frisk us and to look through our stuff. That's why specific is important. If you strike this out, you're basically sanctioning racial profiling. I ask for a no vote on this amendment. I ask for a no vote specifically not only because of my educational background, my legal background, but my personal experience on this.
Is there further discussion? Representative Lundin.
To the amendment.
To the amendment L004.
What we're walking through right now is an important piece of legislating, if you will, of making sausage, of trying to figure out how we can get at the intent of the legislation and at the same time not unnecessarily or beyond necessary controlling the ability to keep our streets safe and to keep police officers able to do the work that they need to do. This word specific, when pulled, I think drives us toward the middle of that course and improves the ability of moving this legislation forward. So I speak in favor of the amendment. I would ask the bill sponsor to seriously consider the amendment and the improvement it brings to the legislation.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm trying to understand, and maybe the person who's bringing the amendment can come forward and answer this. How does this make the bill better? How does it make it better to drop specific? because when I look at that, it guts the bill. It takes away from the intent of the bill. I'm hearing that this finds the middle road. No, this doesn't find the middle road at all. This makes it so officers can take a non-specific description and pull someone over. It allows for someone to be profiled based on their race. And that's the intent of this legislation. This goes completely against the intent of the legislation. So maybe the proponents of this amendment can come forward and explain how this gets us towards the goal of ending profiling in the state of Colorado.
Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Representative Melton, first off, this doesn't gut the bill, I don't think. Suspect by itself is a defined term of law, so you have to have some language that goes out that makes what are you looking for in a suspect. And that's what I talked about in my example. You could think of hundreds of other examples where bikes are stolen in a very affluent neighborhood like Representative Kagan might represent. And you would have the law enforcement be looking for kids on bikes. Well, that's not specific enough to start stopping every kid on a bike who happens to be living or meet the profile that lives in that neighborhood. But with specific, there's a potential that they would stop one young man, young woman, whoever they find on this bike and say, where did you get that bike from in this affluent neighborhood? And the other kid says, you have a new bike every day, don't you? Now all of a sudden, they may lose that down the road if specific's not there because a good defense attorney will say, that wasn't specific enough to stop them in the first place. And that argument will be made. It's called, in law, as many of you know, it's fruits of the poisonous tree. So when that happens, everything that was up to that point cannot be used in evidence. And so you lose the ability potentially to solve a crime because we have poisoned the tree because in the courts and the defense attorney's usage of the language, specific was not met with regards to the stoppage in the first place of asking the person on the bike, was that their bike or not, even though they met sort of a general sense of what they were looking for in a neighborhood of which a lot of bikes were being stolen down from this far place, and they met the demographics that were in that neighborhood, which was, in my scenario, would be a bunch of young white kids. And that would be the problem. And so specific, well, I understand the intent of the sponsor having it in there in the first place and the arguments that Representative Salazar has made. It opens up some other problems with regards to evidence and with regards to furthering the solvings of crimes in Colorado. And that's why I'd ask for a yes vote on this amendment.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Dorr. Representative Williams put up on the screen graphics of who's being pulled over. The extreme extent of African Americans being pulled over in multiple municipalities. One of the things that she didn't put up there was statistics from the Denver Police Department scorecard, which showed that African Americans and Latinos were 3 times more likely to be pulled over and to be searched than non-African Americans, than non-Latinos. And why is that? Because they're not looking for specific. It's about racial profiling. Racial profiling isn't looking at specific. That's why the language is in there. I reiterate, if you take this amendment, or if you agree with this amendment, gut the whole bill. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's an idea for the amendment. I just don't know. But this amendment guts the entire bill. We are trying to lower the amount of racial profiling that you see happening throughout municipalities in the state of Colorado, based off of police department's own records. It's not making it more difficult, it's better policing by having specific in there. Again, I ask for a no vote.
Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as we know in this chamber, at certain points, Representative Salazar and myself will just agree to disagree, because I believe this does not gut the bill. There's a lot of good aspects to this bill that stay in there, and they do not go away with the striking of one word, specific. But what does go away with striking one word of specific is this vagueness of what will law enforcement have to look for, what will they have to do to meet the criteria, so that district attorneys can even say, we think the stop was well enough so that you can go forward and a defense attorney won't eat you alive when it comes to the matter of a hearing. I've seen many TV shows, the ABC shows, I forget the name of it right now, but where they'll have a scenario take place in a live situation, and then they'll talk to 5 or 6 people who saw the same situation, and they have 5 or 6 images of what they saw. They'll say this person was 7'2", and the other one will say, oh no, they were 6'1". That's a lot different. They'll have these different descriptions of what they were wearing. And that happens in real life. That happens all the time. Eyewitnesses, 3 or 4 or 5 or 8 of them, will have different descriptions of what they saw. So then when that message goes out, here's what you're sort of looking for, it becomes fairly vague because the spectrum of what they're looking for is between shorter and taller, somewhere here or there. They were fat or thin. They were wearing a blue or green shirt. There's nothing specific about the eyewitnesses' accounts. And so what are we going to ask law enforcement to do? Don't stop anybody at that point, because the defense attorney is going to eat this up and you're going to lose any evidence. And we're potentially going to have unsolved crimes. And that's my concern. I don't want to see racial profiling. I don't want to see profiling on anybody's gender. I don't want to see profiling, anything happen in our state. But I also don't want to see us become a state where we have a bunch of unsolved crimes, because we've now made this a defense attorney's just dream to have language that they can use and take apart. And Representative Salazar, I know as an attorney, you can't argue that the defense attorneys won't use it, and they won't use it to the full ability that they can, because you've seen the same thing I've seen in the courtroom. They get paid to do everything they can with regards to defending their client, and they should. And we're going to give them a big tool in their toolbox to do this, and I would ask for a yes vote on this amendment.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Dorr, I want to thank you for your views and the feedback that you've given us. We've had a good conversation, but members, let's just be clear. It's hard to understand racial profiling unless you've been profiled, and I'm asking for a no vote on this amendment.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L004? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L004. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. L004 is lost. To the bill, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And everyone, thank you for your time, your patience, and the feedback. This is an important piece of legislation that will help bring safety, security to those who may be racially profiled. And I just want to repeat that this is happening all over our state. It's not just in Denver County, and it's not just in Arapahoe County. And one more time, unless you've been racially profiled, it's hard to understand these circumstances. But through the testimony and what we've shown you here, it is alive, it's well, and it's happening in our state, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1288? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1288. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. House Bill 1288 is passed. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1165.
House Bill 1165, Representatives Salazar and Melton, also Senator Ulibarri, concerning the use of American Indian mascots by public institutions of education.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1165 and the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Representative Melton. To the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the appropriations, there was an original fiscal note where we were taking $200,000 of general fund money. We actually had that removed in appropriations and replaced with gifts, grants, and donations. I would ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The Appropriations Committee report is passed. To the bill, Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, 1165 addresses a problem that we're having in Colorado in terms of publicly funded institutions of education, our middle schools, our K through 12, our high schools, which are promoting a symbol or a name that is so derogatory to students and to communities that it must be addressed. Members, we have a large Native American community here in the state. And I understand being a student here in the state and trying to go to class and not have to deal with the pressures of racism, and then having to go to a school where your mascot is named after a derogatory name. I can't even imagine trying to be able to focus under those pressures. So members, with 1165, this will create a commission of Native American members, as well as 2 non-voting members from higher ed and from from the Department of Education, to convene a commission to go through mascots that have Native American historical ties and determine which ones would be appropriate for use without offending the community. And with that, members, I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative Humphrey.
Thank you. Good morning, members. I rise in opposition to the bill. Certainly sympathetic with those who might be or who are offended by certain names or images, but I just believe that this is a wrong-headed, overreaching, and controversial bill. This is not an issue to use the force of government to coerce communities into submission. In the words of the Denver Post, changing mascots should be done, quote, by the people, not by an official state committee empowered to rule on the sustainability of all Indian mascots and names, as House Bill 1165 envisions. And having talked to the superintendent up in Eaton, I mean, they say that just for their school to replace everything would be $200,000 or more, and that money's not there. I can't imagine how much that this could add up to, and I just think that that this bill starts a bad precedent. So I urge a no vote on this bill.
Representative Lundin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we heard this bill in Education Committee, and what it seeks to do is something that I support. If there's something that's racist or aberrant, it needs to go away. My challenge, my concern with this has to do with two concepts, appointed versus elected. We've got elected school boards across the state that their communities, the people of their community, vest them with the responsibility and the authority of properly representing the values that we hold dear and contradicting values that we oppose. To create an appointed board to essentially boss that constitutionally elected local school board around is, in my mind, an inversion of the way we should, in fact, do business. I think we are seeing, in fact, a movement away from mascots that are aberrant, and that's good. We don't want to see those. We don't want those to exist, but they should be stamped out, snuffed out, eliminated by virtue of the elected individuals from those communities, as opposed to being bossed around, if you will, by an appointed task force. I think we've got this process backwards in the way this bill approaches the challenge that we face. I speak against the bill.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Lundin, for your comments. I guess that's one way of looking at it, that we're bossing people around, or the other way that we could look at it is we're trying to protect children, which is our right as a state. As you recall, during committee hearings, there was discussion on the psychological effects that mascots have on American Indian children. There was no counter-argument to it. This research is set. It is set.
that the psychological effects on American Indian children are negative, and also non-American Indian children. Those students who go to high schools, such as those that hold on to skins, redskins, and savages, that those non-American Indian students, when they go away to schools for home game or for away games, how they're ridiculed because of the school name and the psychological effect it has on those children. This is a bill to protect children. It is a bill that is designed to allow the American Indian community to make decisions on their own on how they want to be honored. It's a simple thing, really. Go to the people you want to honor and ask them, how can I best honor you? You've also heard in committee too, members, let's not forget our history. Let's not forget our American history. That even in the Declaration of Independence, it categorizes Indians as merciless Indian savages. Let's also not forget that we had an extermination era in American history through Andrew Jackson, a Democrat, who wanted to exterminate American Indians and use the names savages. Let's also not forget our American history, where states put in ads in papers calling for $200 for the redskins of any American Indians. These names do not derive from a positive place. The American Indian community knows that. Many members are right over here, and they're up here as well. They know that. They know the history of where redskins come from, of where savages come from, and they also know the psychological effects too. This isn't about bossing around. And if we want to talk about commissions that boss around, we do have commissions that boss around. We have the Public Utilities Commission. We have the Civil Rights Commission. We have many other commissions that, if sexual harassment happened right here, the Civil Rights Commission would have the authority to come right here to investigate and boss us around. And it's done for protection purposes. That's why this bill is necessary. There are communities that refuse to change. Levita Redskins, the students went to Levita Redskins School Board. They went as a united force after researching mascots. And they went to their school board and said, let's change this. And the community members fought against them. Community members who are no longer students, they fought against it. And it was one vote that decided not to change the name. And it was the school board president. And she said in an interview, and I could play it for you if you want. She said it in an interview, I know I am wrong on history on this, but I had to vote this way because I feared personal retribution. What a sad commentary. I know I am wrong on the wrong side of history on this. If you know you're on the wrong side of history, then change it. Because history is going to put you behind and put you as a footnote that you knew that you were on the wrong side of history. Change it. And I feared personal retribution. That's a sad commentary for that community. That they're on the wrong side of history, but they're going to stay on the wrong side of history, and any elected official who decides to go on the right side of history will suffer personal retribution. That is a state issue, because state dollars go there. We are here to protect children, all children, American Indian children who are affected by it psychologically, as well as non-American Indian children. I ask for a yes vote on this bill, House Bill 1165. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would never want to hurt anyone's feelings because of a mascot. But let me just tell you honestly, and I represent the southwestern part of the state, and specifically the Southern Ute Indian tribe. And I haven't had any of them come to me and say that this was a huge problem. Now, I may be wrong on this, but And in fact, I have friends, some employees, that they're really proud of the fact that there's the Washington Redskins. And I just think that we're sticking our nose, the state is, into the business of school districts. And it's just something that, I don't think that we should do. So I would ask for a no vote on this bill.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I ask for an aye vote on this bill. Even though you've heard from the opposition on two different fronts, and I'm a little confused by that. One saying that we shouldn't create a commission of non-elected officials to decide this, which baffles me because I cannot speak for Native Americans better than Native Americans can speak for themselves. I can tell you what I'm offended as an African American all day long, but I can't speak and tell you exactly what Native Americans would be offended by, which is why we're creating a commission to give the community a voice about what is appropriate or acceptable in order to avoid racism in our schools. So that's one. But then I'm hearing, well, I don't hear a problem. And if there's not a problem, we shouldn't deal with it in the legislature. Well, Representative Brown, in your district, actually, your district would be exempt because your schools have worked with the Native American community to find a logo or a mascot that they'd be proud of. Just like Arapahoe High School in the Cherry Creek School District. They worked with the Arapahoe tribe and actually found a historically accurate mascot that they can be proud of and that the community can be proud of. So you're right, there are instances where there is pride, but those instances are the ones where they've actually worked with the school or with the Native American community. We're talking about the ones that the Native American community has fought against for decades. The Redskins, the Savages. And if you can imagine going to school, being a Native American kid, and being called a savage, or having to be proud of savages, a name that has been derogatory for centuries against your people. That is baffling. That is crazy. Members, there is a need for this bill, and this is the appropriate way to do it. Give the community a voice about what is appropriate for their community. I guarantee if we were talking about African Americans or Asian Americans or Latinos, this wouldn't be a conversation. But because for some crazy reason, historically, we denied these people a vote or a voice, now all of a sudden, there's no need for it. Or there shouldn't be done by a commission. We should tell this community what they should be accepted or what they should accept. Members, we've got to change our thinking. It is time to move forward, let go of the past, and let's do what's right by our children in this state. Members, I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to correct the record. Arapahoe High School is in Littleton Public Schools, not Cherry Creek. Thank you. I'd also like to ask, one of the reasons that the Arapahoe Warriors name was chosen was because the school had great reverence, had great respect, and the characteristics that were embodied by this American Indian tribe were characteristics that they wanted to embody in the student body. Since when is choosing a mascot a derogatory incentive or name, or since when do you take it as this is meaning something derogatory towards that? I mean, I graduated from Gateway High School, the Olympians. They didn't choose that because they wanted to slap Olympians in the face. That was chosen because of the respect and the honor that they had towards those that embodied the Olympic athletes and their spirit and what they gave. Why is the same sentiment not true? And if it's not true on an individual and specific school, then what prevents that Indian tribe from simply going to that school and say, hey, and working on a local level? Because trust me, this is not broken statewide. I rise in opposition.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Conti, have you not listened to this argument? We're not saying that Arapahoe High School did it wrong. In fact, we're praising them. They did it right. And I'm sorry, Littleton, not Cherry Creek. That's my correction. But they did it right. They worked with the Native American community. They did it right. That's the model we want everyone to follow. But unfortunately, not all the schools are, because they're ignoring the voice of the Native American community. There have been Native American communities that have been reaching out to schools with the name Redskins or Reds or Savages, and they've been ignored. Their voice hasn't been heard. So no, you're right. Arapahoe High School, great example. I just said that they're a great example before you came up here. But that's what we want the rest of the districts to follow. Let them be the shining light. And if you don't understand why a mascot could be derogatory, think about being called a savage. And if you're a part of that historical group, think about being called a redskin and you're a part of that historical group. There are names that I know I wouldn't accept as a Native American at all. At all. Members, this is about fairness. This is about respect. This is about community. Members, we should not be using public dollars to degrade any group or any person. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Corum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, recently I was told that because of the negative connotation of the word, the Washington Redskins are changing their name. From now on, they will simply be known as the Redskins. But I'm going to tell you, I represent Southwest Colorado. We have the Ute Mountain Reservation on my district. We have the Ute Mountain Ranch next door to me on Blue Mesa. And we're very proud of that relationship that we have. But let me tell you, I'm not sure that everybody that is a Native American considers the word redskin as offensive. If it were, Red Mesa, a school on the Navajo Reservation in Arizona, would not be known as the Red Mesa Redskins.
Representative Salazar. A couple of things. And I don't see that she's around anymore, but Representative Conti, we're not talking about Olympians. We're not talking about animals. We're not talking about colors. We're not talking about mythological creatures. We're talking about human beings, where there was an actual U.S. policy of extermination of human beings. Thus the name Redskins, thus the name Savages, Reds, things of that nature. You cannot honor people based off of words that derive from racist and intentions that are based on extermination. There is no people on the planet that would tolerate such an argument. With respect to the Redskins on the Navajo Reservation, I don't know if you know this, but there's a move to change that one too. And yes, there are some American Indians who like the word redskin, but there's many, many more who do not. And the reason why is because they're educated about their history. Because they know where that word derives from. They know the violent act of the killing and the scalping and the peeling of skin is where Redskins derives from. Please, members, let's do not boil this down to Olympians and bears and colors and mythological creatures. Let's talk about a human being. Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I want to remind Representative Salazar, and I know he remembers this, that last year was the tragic anniversary of an atrocity that happened in our state, of which we ran a resolution on, and I was the sponsor, about the Sand Creek Massacre. And I stood with him at events in Kiowa County, as well as on these Capitol steps in late November to commemorate that tragic event and those that lost their lives at the brutal hands of those who were misguided by immoral activities. So it's disingenuous to think that anyone in my side of the aisle believes that anything that happened in our history, those kind of tragedies, those kind of atrocities, believe that it shouldn't be remembered. He mentioned that we are talking about people, humans, and protecting children. And I agree, we need to protect our children. We also need to protect our children who are the students at our schools. And in this bill, there's a $25,000 punitive amount for schools that don't change their names. $25,000 not once a year, but every month. In 2 months, that's $50,000. That's potentially 2 teachers at some of my rural schools. At a school like down in Lamar, of which there was an article a week and a half ago that Lynn Bartles wrote, which I would, if you get a chance, read it. Because it gave the community's insight into how they feel about their school mascot and the pride they take in their school and the history of it. But at that school, they've already cut 3 teaching jobs in the last 5-6 years because of what we've done in the legislative body. A $50,000 or $75,000 hit would mean 2-3 more jobs. What other programs would they be willing to cut? They've cut 4 already. Well, would you have them cut more now? Is the tribunal going to take up and tell them which programs they need to cut? Because the transition won't happen immediately. And it takes years and a lot of money to have everything that has been put in place to change. I'm not going to argue about the names of the schools. I want to argue about the reality of what this bill does. And it punishes the schools. It punishes the schools when their local community may be in support. And the discussion should happen at the local community if there needs to be a name change. I think that's where it needs to start. And it needs to happen there. But now the state wants to come in an almighty way and say, no, you cannot do this, and we're going to punish you at $25,000 a month if you don't change. And we're going to count that against you. And we don't care how many jobs you lose, how many teachers you lose, how many student programs you lose, how many buses cannot pick up the kids. That to me is very troubling. I'm also concerned about the fact that we're running away from the community. Local control is being thrown out the window. The local communities need to be highly involved in this because it is their schools that they love. And if the name of their mascot is something that is misguided or for some way, they need to have that discussion there. Not have the state come down and say, you need to do this now, and we're going to hit you over the head with a fairly big mallet with a big dollar sign on it. And not to give Representative Salazar any suggestions for further legislation, but where does this stop? We have a few counties in Colorado, Kiowa County, which I represent, and a couple others that are named after Native American tribes. Are we going to go after them in years to come to change their county names? So those are the kind of things I think need to be discussed. And this legislation, while there may be a good discussion to have, the punitive side of it doesn't need to go the way it's going. And it's not about protecting children when you talk about that kind of dollar amount. It's about hurting the students. And on the back of these students, of which we have already done a lot of injury in this legislative body over the last few years, we'll just continue to do so. I'd ask for a no vote.
Representative Melton.
Excuse me, I'm dropping stuff after that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is Kiowa a negative or demeaning name? No, it's the name of a historic tribe that was here. We're talking about names like savages, names where people were hunted and used by that term. We need to find the savages. We need to go west and take care of the savages. We're not talking about the Kiowa or the Arapaho or the Cheyenne or names that are the tribes. So let's be clear. Let's not muddle or get all muddy into that. Let's deal with the actual names of the schools that kids have to see day in and day out. And you want to talk about the fine. Yes, there is a fine. There is a fine because these communities have tried to work with these schools just to run into a brick wall over and over again. You want to talk about local control? The locals had the opportunity to do it, and they didn't. And so that's the reason why the state needs to step in. If we were talking about a different derogatory term, a different racial term, this wouldn't be a conversation. If we were talking about a term that dismissed Native American or African Americans, if we had nooses in schools, we wouldn't have this conversation. This would be a no-brainer. I would see that board light up with 65 votes. So why are we making a difference now when it comes to Native American names and Native American mascots? Why are we making such a roadblock barrier, making such an argument for allowing the community to say what is best or what they find offensive or acceptable? Members, these are state dollars going towards schools, schools that our kids go to. I don't want my kids going to a school that's called the Savages. You shouldn't want yours either. Members, I ask for an aye vote on this.
Representative Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, during testimony, actually just in education in general, you've heard me here at the well many times talking about this, is we've heard give us more money and cut the strings. What we heard during testimony was the direct effect it's going to have on these rural school districts, like Strasburg's, for example. They said it's going to cost them $75,000 to rip up the gym floor, do their stationery, replace the scoreboard, and this is 2 teachers that it's going to cost them just to get in compliance if they were held accountable under this bill. This is what we're going to see. Most of these school districts that have the mascots that are in question here are small school districts. They're rural school districts. They're small. They don't have the financial resources to do this. This bill originally had an option, a very small option, to where groups could or schools could pull down and actually backfill that money. That's not in here anymore. All this bill really does is punitively affect school districts. $25,000 a month. That's a teacher, folks. These are kids that are not going to be able to get an education. Let's stick to the facts here. I urge a no vote on this bill.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1165? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1165. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. House Bill 1165 is passed. Mr. Kohler, please read. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to labor the balance of the calendar until tomorrow, April 14th.
It's been moved to lay over the balance of the calendar till April 14th without objection. So moved, so ordered. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You've heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report. Do I have the gavel?
The House will come back to order. Mr. Kohler, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, Committee of the Whole begs leave for purpose and consideration of the following attached bills being second reading and over makes following recommendations thereon. House Bills 1165 amended, 1288 amended, passed on second reading and order gross placed on the counter for third and final passage. Senate Bill 137 amended, passed on second reading and order revised placed on the counter for third and final passage.
Representative Young. You've heard the motion and there are no amendments on the desk. The question before the House is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Joshi and Representative Janal. Representative Joshi and Representative Janal are each fined $2. Please close the machine. With 64 ayes, no noes, and 1 excuse, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and colleagues. I am letting you know that the first conference committee on Senate Bill 234, the long bill, will be tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the JBC meeting space in the LSB third floor. Thanks.
Representative Vigil.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members of the Ag, Livestock, and Natural Resources Committee, we meet at 1:30 today. We're going to hear 2 bills. House Bill 1320 for action only, and then 1325. And then tomorrow morning, members of the CDC Capital Development Committee, we will meet at 7:30 in room 356, and the Ag Committee will meet in 107 today at 1:30. So 356 tomorrow at 7:30, and we're going to hear some bills tomorrow for the for the National Western Complex and other related CDC bills.
Representative Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Education Committee, House Bill 1350 is going to be laid over for next week. Just wanted to give you the heads up. Thank you.
Are there further announcements and introductions? Seeing none, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until later today at 1 p.m.
The motion is to stand in recess until later today at 1 p.m. Any objections? Seeing no objections, so ordered. We are in recess till 1 p.m. this afternoon.